money market funds, various people that lend money to banks that they loan out, say, they kind of panicked. And that led to the financial crisis, that people said, if we can't trust the numbers, we don't know if we want to give you our money. I think a lot of this financial reform is about ways to reestablish the public trust, ways to hold accountable not just the banks, but the regulators, the rating agencies, a number of others, so that will give them an incentive to provide fully accurate information, and that helps get you around some of this mark-to-market problem.
All right, and that actually leads into a kind of broader, I think, very intuitive question, which is how will this reform function if the next administration appoints a fox to guard the henhouse?
Well, if you appoint, we've learned repeatedly throughout the history of the country, unfortunately, that if you appoint people who are explicitly trying to get rid of regulations or to not enforce regulations that are on the book, that are on the books, you're in a tough spot. I mean, one way to get around that is to make explicit rules that would be in the law. But even then, if people are going to actively try to undermine those laws, I think it's hard. You're in a hard spot. In my view, the most effective way to get the regulators to do what is intended in the law is to put in place a system where they can be held accountable. So if you take consumer protection in the Consumer Protection Agency, as I mentioned, right now, those functions are spread over 7 different agencies, and in none of those 7 agencies is this the main thing they do. So if you're the bank regulator at the OCC and you have a consumer protection within your body, but the main thing you do is bank regulation, you're going to have a tendency to kind of skimp on that because nobody's butt is in the seat and being held accountable. If you have a consumer protection agency where there's somebody appointed whose job is to protect consumers, and if credit card companies start abusing the law or not following what's in the credit card bill, they'll go to that person and say, what are you doing? The law states that they must observe A, B, and C practices, and they're not doing it. And ultimately, that's the public pressure that can get the foxes to settle down, if they're in charge of the hen house.
All right, I think that was a great explanation. We're going to take one more question. I don't know if it's a softball. It kind of is. But Dave LaRose asked on Facebook earlier, Austan Goolsbee on-the-job training knows nothing and is helping to ruin our country. But then look at all the other fools working for the administration.
That's our last question. Thanks a lot. Well, first of all, Dave, let me say that wasn't phrased as a question, so I don't have to answer it.
Well, the reason I wanted to ask is, a lot of times we have these chats and people don't actually know much about the bio of the person sitting here answering the question. So why don't you talk a little bit about kind of your expertise and maybe a little bit about the very long process that it took to get this bill developed and get to where we are now.
Okay, I am an economics professor from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. I'm on leave. I'm at the Council of Economic Advisors, which is made up of economists who are on leave from universities and economic experts in different areas. We took part in the formulation of the financial regulatory white paper / blueprint, which came out last summer. I'm also the chief economist of the President's Economic Recovery Advisory Board, which is headed by Paul Volcker and comprised of a number of financial experts and regulators. You got Roger Ferguson was vice chair of the Fed. Bill Donaldson was head of the SEC. Volcker himself was head of the Fed, obviously. And so we have tried to bring in experts from all different venues within the economy, within the financial system, academics, policymakers, regulators, when we formulated what the key principles would be. And the financial crisis started more than 2 years ago. So as I say on this legislation, we have been talking for a long time, debating the issues. It's time to bring that to an end. I think the sentiments that we're a fool and we know nothing, Look, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I think we have tried as administration to reach out to bring in all sorts of viewpoints and to try to distill that into something that would work and protect the system. As a last note, I guess what I'd say is the financial institutions and a few of the financial institutions and a few of the special interests are lobbying as hard as they can. They have spent hundreds of millions of dollars. They have hired 5 lobbyists per member of Congress trying to put loopholes back into this regulatory reform, trying to protect the status quo that has been extremely generous and extremely lucrative to a very small number of institutions. We cannot afford to do that. Where the we is not the administration, it's the American people and the economy. We cannot afford to let this go back to what it was that got us into this mess. If you look out the window, more than 8 million people have lost their jobs in this recession, deepest since the Depression, and they've lost their jobs in a recession fueled by financial crisis. So say what you want about me, but together we have got to do this. And I think ultimately everyone knows that. Even the financial institutions themselves know that we can't go back to the status quo because that's what got them into crisis, not just the economy. So I hope that everybody will go to whitehouse.gov. We'll read about the bill. We'll talk to their leadership, Congress, anyone about their concerns that we reform the financial system and prevent this kind of thing from happening again. And I appreciate your time watching.
All right. Yep. Thanks so much. And thanks so much, Austin. Look forward to doing it again.